We are back, episode 18 of the Without Limits podcast. Today, we're going to be doing a bit of a Q&A. So over the last week or so, I put out to my audience on Instagram if anyone had any questions. Now, in typical fashion, because I wasn't too specific about these questions, we've had a broad range, everything from what is my shoe size through to topics on nutrition and training and things that are probably far more helpful for the majority of people. So I've had my co-host here, Sam, go through the questions, filter through them to see how we can sort of construct an episode that's going to be insightful into where Marchon's at as a business, what I'm currently working on my role within this beast, and then also, like I say, some more applicable things with training and nutrition. I think we've touched on some amazing topics with the guests that we've had on. Everything that I wanted it to be: business, fitness, nutrition, lifestyle, mindset. All the things that I'm super interested in, and naturally I follow people who are in those spaces, doing things that I either aspire to do one day, doing things that I can relate to, and just good people. So hopefully you guys have been enjoying it. I know the feedback's been fantastic. We've got some awesome guests lined up in the coming weeks, and a little bit more of the same, I think. Truth be told, I'm finding podcasting when life gets hectic with running the company, travel, and all the other things I'm trying to do with my own kind of aspirations, personal goals as a quote unquote athlete and as a father and businessman, quite tough. But I think we've had a good start so far.
It's been a banging start. Yeah, we haven't seen much of each other for the last couple of weeks, so this will be a good little catch-up for us as well. Off the back of what you just said, my first question's been, I mean, it's going to be a tough one to answer, and sorry to any guests that don't make this list, but what's been your favourite podcast so far, and why?
That's such a difficult question. So what has been really evident is that there are a number of episodes that I've sat down and loved every episode, but there's a number of them that resonate with certain people. And then there's other episodes that resonate with other people. And like, it's weird knowing that some people love the Lauren episode more than anything else. And I'm like, I've had these guests that are experts in their field, decades in their space. And you preferred the episode with Lauren. I think there's been a nice mix right across the board. I personally I've sat down with Steve Cook. I mean, that was sick.
That's good.
Sitting down with Ryan Fisher, sick. I thought Hunter's episode was amazing to kick things off because you got to see a side of this competitor that is, you realise why he's so good. But truthfully, the episode that I think the most emotion was brought out of me was the one with Grayson. A good friend of mine. And we just got into some deep stuff, and we hadn't sat down and talked for a little while. I think he's personally at a stage in life where he's going through a bit of self-discovery and exploration. And I felt the most like I was pulled into that episode the most because of his kind of story and relationship with his dad and things. But that's not to, like I said, to dismiss the other stuff. The other guests and the things we've been talking about are stuff that I'm super interested in, but it's stuff that I hear and I'm around all the time because of my natural interest in those topics, whereas with Grayson it was more on a personal level, if that makes sense.
Yeah, sure. And what's your sort of opinion on the podcast now we're 18 episodes in? How are your thoughts before we started it, in the middle, and like where we are now? Have they changed at all about the way that people consume this type of media, or in terms of like, you get tagged in however many stories a day about people listening to it in different locations all around the world. We see the stats from everywhere. How does it make you feel that people are like consuming this content?
I have no real context of what's good and what's bad unless you tell me, when you were like, we've had 120 downloads, 1,000 downloads of whatever, it sounds cool, but I'm like, what does it actually mean? Yeah. It's not until you kind of compare that to other podcasts and things that you realize we're doing well. One thing I think the listeners have loved it because we try to make it all about the guests, which can sometimes be, I guess, detrimental to the fact that this podcast is an extension of the Marchon brand and my interests and things, and how can we relate that back to the business. But by making it all about the guests, I think it's just such a nice, easy listen because people are hearing different things each week. So from that perspective, I've really enjoyed hearing people's feedback of a podcast that is a little bit more refreshing and there's no real agenda or ulterior motive. And I hope we can maintain that. It's been, when I haven't been traveling, which the last 3-4 weeks, reference me and you haven't had much time together. It's been a strain in our relationship. But when I haven't been traveling and being here, there and everywhere, it's a nice break in the usual workflow for me to sit down and have an hour's, sometimes more conversation with people who are incredibly interesting. So I've really loved it. It's superseded my expectations. I think the feedback's been great. I am hyper aware that maintaining the momentum and keeping relevant with credible guests and just adding value to people if they're going to commit to an hour of their time each week to listen is something that is, I feel the pressure. Bit critical about my early kind of performances on the podcast and my ability to ask the right questions, articulate myself well, not go and agree with people and make all these weird noises that people have to listen to. So yeah, big learning curve. It stretched my my capacity a little bit in my skill set, taught me a few new things and given me a lot back in terms of listening to listeners and building rapport with people.
Sure. And what would you say, this is going to be a hard question, but what's been the biggest takeaway from the last 18 episodes, whether it was a particular thing that a guest said or just like what you've learned from this sort of experience so far? Anything that springs to mind?
I think the guest that I have the most, respect's not the right word. I'm so in awe of what the Heaton boys have done and represent. I think everyone is, right. Like they're just so down to earth and so humble. And I think personally I took a lot from that episode because their success and the success that they've currently got has come from just doing this, not doing the same stuff. It's obviously improving and iterating on what you're doing. And there's been a few inflection points in their business that you can see they pivoted and took new direction. But it's a case of keep showing up and eventually you start to get those breakthroughs. So I think relating that back to myself and our business, that's what I took the most from. It wasn't anything groundbreaking. There wasn't like this defining moment. There's probably a few things with COVID that they spoke about that things happened and they made some choices. But it's actually that anyone can achieve it so long as you stick to your guns, remain hardworking, underpins everything. Taking a little bit of risk underpins everything. But sticking in it for the long game, even when things get tough. So I thought that was just a really nice lesson from people who are right now probably the hottest prospects, both in the UK and overseas.
Yeah, I mean their insights were incredible, and the feedback on that episode was really, really good. So I think the community would agree. So moving off the podcast and touching off what we talked about, you've been very busy recently. What's going on in the world of Ollie Marchon? Not the business, but you personally and everything. I mean, the business is you, but everything else that goes with that.
It's been a weird period. Like, so LA was an amazing trip, obviously for a number of reasons. Being in LA, spending a lot of time with George and the Represent boys and girls, and running the marathon. So I think prior to LA, if we look at me in a few different parts, like the athlete, right, fitness. So prior to LA, everyone knows, we spoke about it, my intentions are to run a couple of ultras this year. And like with anything, you go into it with this kind of like naive enthusiasm, because you don't really know what that training will take from the rest of your life, but you're enthusiastic because someone like me, I don't want to let myself down. I want to make sure I'm prepared. So that was kind of my training, was just like trying to spend more time on feet. And then I got thrust into this, okay, you're going to run a marathon now. It was about times, and it wasn't daunting or anything, but I was a little bit disappointed with the cramps and everything that kind of happened. And I came back from that with my tail between my legs a little bit about competing and being, when it matters, being able to do what you should do. So actually, when I came back from that, I was like, right, I'm going to sign up to London. I'm going to get into a marathon training block, and I'm going to fucking send it. Which fundamentally was just like the worst attitude to have, and it wasn't the right decision to try and make. And for one reason or another, that didn't materialize. So I found myself then, since then, going away to Cape Town for my brother's wedding, which was amazing time with Lauren, because we didn't take our kids. Amazing time with my family, my mum and dad being out there, 130 guests. It was fantastic. But that period of, so me as an athlete has kind of been tamed and dampened, and not being able to really train for any specific purpose or reason. Now, the reason being the ultras, which are further in the future, but what I realise is that they're quite far away, and without something to attach myself to from a training standpoint, I find myself not progressing, which is a dangerous place to be for someone like me. So from a fitness sense, that was a realisation coming off the back of Cape Town that I need to get back my teeth stuck into things, more routine, more structure. I know that might sound weird for the listeners because they probably think I've got all this down all the time, but everyone falls off the wagon to a degree. It's a relative term. Like, I've not fallen completely off it. I'm still eating well and I'm still going to the gym, but I just need a little bit more structure and just like reason to doing things. So that's kind of where I'm at right now. Tighten the reins a little bit on my nutrition. Going into the gym now with a lot more intent around what I'm looking to lift and the numbers I'm wanting to hit, which has been really cool.
Do you think that realization about your thoughts about the marathon and what it done mentally to you in terms of needing to get back to a position that you were at before happened at a moment, or was it just a slow progress and you decided actually when you come back from South Africa, that's the time to sort of nail it in a little bit more? Just for the people that are listening that obviously have those moments of feeling like they've fallen off or they haven't reached a certain potential and they need to get back in the game, that like transition period between actually going and doing it is quite tough. What did that conversation sort of sound like for you?
I think zooming out a little bit, just to give context, if we look at those 3 buckets, right? So me wanting to fulfill my athletic potential forever, right? And that's going to look different at different ages that I'll hit. Me wanting to fulfill my duties as a father and husband, and me wanting to fulfill the potential of the business. The latter, so the business is like taken off over the last 18 months, and it's all untrodden ground and new territory for me. Teams growing, so how do we manage people? Risk is going up, so how do we make sure that we don't drop the ball somewhere and overexpose ourselves? Vision's getting bigger, so how do we fulfill on that and put strategy towards it? So it's demanding way more of my time, and that then has a natural knock-on effect of me and the other 2 buckets, which is the family man and the father, and the athlete. And it's taken some time just to kind of go through that process and then see how I manage those 3 things. Fundamentally, I can't manage all 3 at the same time to the level in which I want to. It's really only 2 of those 3 things. So at any one given time, if I want to try and dial up the athlete, I have to appreciate that I'm either going to take time away from my kids where I'm going to be training and I'm going to be too tired, I'm taking resource and energy from myself, so I can't give it to them. Or, the business is going to have to be in a position where other people are taking on a lot of the burden and driving it forward. So to bring it back to your question, like that's just a realization, and that realization keeps happening in waves as one of these things happen. So if I use the example of my kids, now Leo's getting a little bit older, taking him to clubs and all that kind of stuff. Like there's every sort of like 6 months there's a new life cycle of what the demand is or time investment is on one of those 3 things. And ultimately the biggest return on my investment for me as an athlete is just going to be on my long-term health. It's not going to be on what numbers I can lift and what and the speeds I can run, although that's nice. And it does sometimes complement the brand and authenticates what we talk about. But really the biggest return is going to be on seeing my kids, succeed in whatever they want to do and seeing my business, keep going forward. So it's, I think this year in particular, because of the ambition for the business, has just been it's been a bit of change and a bit of realization. To bring it back to your question, I think it's natural that you can't be 12 months on if you're trying to do other things. A lot of people, our demographic, are that little bit older. They're not teenagers or early 20s where they don't really have much responsibility, and they can just go out and try and be an athlete or try and be an entrepreneur or try and be whatever they're looking to do, and they've got time on their hands. Those that are a little bit older, more responsibility around kids, more responsibility around mortgages and bills and that kind of stuff. Like the pressure's a little bit higher. The risk is the rewards are often greater, but the risks are bigger. So I think it's understandable, and people need to show themselves just a little bit of understanding around times of the year when you can really put your foot down, and if things aren't going your way, it's just a course correction. Does that answer what you said?
For sure. I think it touches on something quite important as well. So obviously on social media, especially in the fitness industry, there's a lot of this like hustle culture in terms of like going out and training really hard and killing business and being a family man. Do you think more awareness to the fact that doing all 3 isn't possible, or it's a big challenge, and that actually you have to take a look at those 3 buckets and decide where you're going to pull certain things from should be more of a conversation rather than this like mentality of like, oh, this guy's doing it all. He's the great father. He's a great athlete. He's a great businessman, where actually people should be sort of looking at where their time needs to be split.
Yeah, I think everyone's going to be different. I'm sure there are some people out there that can do all three of those things way better than I can. So I'm not the textbook model that I think people should aspire to be like. I'm just out there doing those 3 things. Like I'm a father of 3 kids. I'm running a business with a headcount of over 30 people that has international aspirations, and I'm a relatively good athlete that can still kind of do a few things. So if that's if you're the muse, if you're the person that's trying to do those things, then I might be an example of it. But it is fucking hard. Like I referenced the example of Leo, and I've spoke to this before. But if I'm super critical of Leo's early years and to where he is now at 6, like there's been times where I've not been around to do the things that like a great dad maybe should do, around taking them to clubs and always being there, being the person that my mum and a lot of mums are, which often drive the kids around, do all that kind of stuff. I always wanted to be that dad. But then when I see myself, or I get into a situation where this business has this potential, I've sometimes not been there because of travel and what have you. So now, more recently, I'm making a point of taking him to football every Monday for 4:15, which means leaving work early, trying to get out of the headspace of work on a Monday, which is like one of the most important days for us, is Shark Monday. Trying to take Leo over to his under 6 football club. And evidently he's not, one of the stronger kids in his football group, which for me, I'm like, is that my fault? Am I late to the party here? Now, obviously he's got time, and, I didn't really excel in rugby till 14 years old, but you start to question yourself a little bit. So the point I'm making here is it's not until you're presented with those situations that you might recalibrate and reassess what you're looking to do. If you want to go and smash all three things, or if business becomes more important to you than your fitness, or vice versa, or whatever your view is on family, that's usually been built on your past experiences and maybe some of the deeper work that you've done in yourself. It's your prerogative. I think everyone's different. It's certainly been a learning curve for me. Like I said, I'm not the same father now with having 3 kids and where they're at with their life than I was like 2-3 years ago, where I thought I had all this time in the world to see them grow. You realise that you don't. Like, I don't know how Leo's 6 years old. The time is fucking precious for them. And these developmental ages are really important. If it's remiss of me to think that Lauren can raise 3 kids. Leo needing to what he needs as a 6-year-old versus Mila at 18 months. So if I want these years of their lives to be as fulfilled as possible in all the things that they're trying to achieve, the learning rate, the physical potential, and all that kind of stuff, like something's kind of got to give for me. So I think that's a different mindset that I had even 18 months ago. But I wasn't presented with it in a way that I could understand it until I've kind of gone through it.
Yeah.
So
I mean, this is interesting. Like I was about to say that obviously we met over 2 years ago now. From what you're saying, it sounds a lot different from maybe how you would have talked about it back then. So even over the last couple of years, that shift is quite noticeable. Yeah,
and I've actually reflected on that because and it is very different to how I acted back then. What I will preface that also by saying, or what kind of complements that discussion, is that yes, the business demands way more now because of the growth and the aspiration, but now personnel and time, people being baked into their roles, they have a lot more ownership and autonomy, and the people that we've brought in now mean that I've been quote unquote afforded that time back, whereas 2 years ago I didn't. Like, I wanted to get here with the business. I didn't really know how to get there, but I knew the only person that could try and drive it was myself, and I had a few key people around me that could support, but really I had to go out and kind of push. Now there's like you'll know as well as I do, now there's like people in here that make you're able to excel more. You're able to pass on knowledge to people like Harrison, for example, and it's like there's just more resource and more time, so that I can leave on Monday and not feel as though the world's going to end. Probably could have left on Monday a lot earlier and things still would have been fine, but that's hindsight, right? But yeah, I've got a very different mindset to what I want my kids' experience to be of me and being around and holidays and time with them than I did 2 years ago. But I think that's just come from maturity and perspective.
So we sort of touched on what Marchon's been up to slightly. Obviously a lot's been going on over the last 2 years. What more recently is going on in the world of Marchon that has changed? What's new?
So personnel-wise, I think bringing Liam into the supplements and Lauren, obviously those two guys coming in, guys and girls, those two coming into the supplements has supercharged fundamentally what we're able to do from a new product standpoint. When we launched the supplements, it was very much in that sports nutrition space with marquee products that that are kind of your household names. Now we're able to really innovate, and I won't go into too much detail or give the game away because we're going to try and sit down with Liam next week on some of these products. But we're going to create one of the world's best products for what that product does. And we've looked at the market and what people are doing, and it's by far going to be one of the world's best products. We're also going to create some performance-based products which are innovative. No one else is doing them. So we're now starting to break out of it being, of course, our performance hydration is amazing, and our workout feels amazing, and the ways and everything else. But it's really that we're competing on taste and also brand and just like that trust in what we do. Now we're starting to bring things to the market that are, no one else is doing them, and they're world leading. So that's been really cool from a product development standpoint. And then Lauren's just understanding of business, her commercial mind, her understanding of brand and marketing, and her connections and things. It's just really accelerated what the opportunity is with now the supplements, to the point where I can be relatively hands off and just step aside and just help with marketing them. So that's been a big change for me, and it's kind of given the supplements a world of its own. If we look at the gyms, you know, they're in a very mature and strong position because we have great coaches, and it's kind of led by Jens overseeing it. So now we have, in fact, I'll probably accelerate that conversation too much. Just park gyms for the time being. Online, going really well. Team's great. App's great. Community's growing, etc. So those main verticals, or those verticals of supplements, online, events, and clothing, you know, we're having a bit more success with. They're kind of taken care of now. I think, you know, you and the content team, everyone's in a good position, which means we can bring our attention back to the gyms, which we know we do really well. That's how we started. It's our bread and butter. It's the core of our business, and it's what we're really passionate about. Physical places of work where people come and they experience, you know, Marchon firsthand, and we just build this real visceral connection with our community. That's been on pause for a couple of years while all that other stuff was being built and getting the right people and stuff. Now I don't think it needs to be on pause. I think we can really fucking take the handbrake off and get after it. The limitations are around, and, you know, and anyone that wants to build a gym or has built a gym will know it costs a lot of money. So the limitations now are around sort of capex, so the cash we need to start the gym, and then the operation involved with it. You know, personnel, finding coaches, relocating coaches to that place. But we feel as though we have the appetite and the confidence that we can do those things. I've alluded to this in the past. Up until now, we're still self-funded. So we've got a pot of sort of money that we're going to put towards growing our physical footprint. So my role over the last sort of couple of months, and maybe prior to that, is yes, all my deliverables, so the YouTube, the podcast, and sort of personal brand, and helping out in different areas of the business where necessary. But it's trying to go out and speak to landlords, negotiate on terms, view properties, and try and find where the next Marchon can be, as well as a bit of travel that we've done, going out and getting boots on the ground in different locations to try and start to build community so that we can see what markets can we go and play in. Is it that we go a little bit harder in there with our app and try and get more users in those places? Is it that we try and get our supplements in there? Is it that eventually we might try and put a gym there? So really it's about how do we keep scaling the operation and explore new territory.
Yeah, sick. You never know, it might be a commercial agent listening to the podcast. We'll be able to send us some locations. So you touched on a little bit in there. I kind of want to ask this question and then give you a little preference of what it means. So what is the Marchon philosophy as it relates to training and the experience of it? The reason I ask that is when people ask me about what Marchon is, or even maybe when they ask you about what Marchon is as a business, how do you explain that it's more than just a fitness brand in a sense of like, what does it stand for? What's different about it than any business that's similar in its field?
So it's a nice question. I think from if we look at in its purest sense from a training standpoint, everyone sort of jumps on this functional notion of functional fitness. I really like the idea as I moved away from sport of like trying to create this athlete 2.0. So it was what you did inside the gym, allowing you to try and go and do the things that, you know, I referenced the fact there might be some late teenagers and early 20-year-olds that want to be athletes, right? So there's a way in which you train to try and express yourself within your athletic endeavor. I think what Marchon is from a training standpoint is it's the same thing. Like we try and get people moving really well, super strong, and improving their cardiovascular fitness. That the athlete that they maybe once were in their late teens and 20s that maybe got taken away from them because they went into a corporate job, they had kids, routine went out the window, they were trying to get on the ladder of just like of life, right? It pulled away from their athletic potential, their movement, because of whatever their life was constructed like, right? So we're trying to put that back into people. So if you're now in your 30s, late 30s, wherever you are, even if you're in your 20s and it's been pulled away from you, we're trying to put that back in now. So training becomes about meaning, and it becomes about trying to unlock that potential that you might never have fulfilled, or the potential that you think you'd exhausted. Like, how can we give it back to you? And what does that potential now look like in your later years, whatever those later years may be? So we had Ollie Marchon on last week. He spoke to the fact that quality of life is going to be improved the stronger you are, right? The more muscle mass you have, the better your body composition is, and longevity of life is going to improve by VO2 max. So our training principles have always been built around those things. And it just so happens that when you prioritize really good movement and you get strong as fuck and you get fit as fuck, you can then go and do stuff like the Hyroxes, the Athexes, and challenges and half marathons and fucking climb mountains and whatever else. That's not to say no one else is doing it. I just think that that unique method that we've created has come from hundreds of thousands of hours of coaching people in person, from 16-year-olds to 72-year-olds, online, thousands of people, again, all different walks of life. So if we were to use Marchon as a research paper, we have so many data points, more data points than I think anyone else would have. And we've got, like I say, age groups, different demographics, different previous training histories. So there's so much data points that we have there that means we can constantly improve the pure sense of the Marchon fitness product over and over and over again. So I think that's probably what we are from a fitness standpoint. Now, how do we make that different to other people? Well, that's stitched together by this ecosystem of the ancillary things that we do, from a mindset towards training, nutrition around training, recovery around training. And we offer all those outlets through education. So it kind of becomes a one-stop shop for all of those things. And I think the question that will always ring true with me, that one of my members said to me probably 5 years ago, it's like, what can you do for me when I'm 60 years old? He's in the shape of his life now at 40, and what can you do for me when I'm 60? And I truly believe that Marchon has the IP, the intellectual property, and the understanding and the know-how and the experience to be able to train people throughout their entire life, still with the intention of wanting to prioritize good movement, get stronger, and get fitter. And I also think that Marchon sells a feeling, because it becomes about a lifestyle and a mindset that just has a deeper connection, a deeper sense of why. Because once you start getting stronger, fitter, more confident shit, and you start doing things, whether it's at home with your kids, or you're going out to run the marathon, or you're going out to do a high rocks, you all of a sudden, you take on a new identity. And I think that's what a lot of people buy into with Marchon, is they're becoming someone different to who they were.
Amazing. So let's go in on that. So let's talk about the differences in the sort of the Marchon world. The reason I bring this up, I think I spoke to you about it the other day. If anyone's been watching The Apprentice, the winner is SGPT Gym up north. And when I was watching it, a lot of the questions that we were asking in that final interview stage about what's different about the business, how do you make sure when you grow, you keep the brand the same, all that sort of stuff, they're very easily answered by what Marchon's created, because of things like education, business that you've got in terms of like the people that are in the gyms, the education that we put out as a brand that get people more in tune about what they're eating and then diets, all that sort of stuff. But let's break it down into like the different divisions. What's different about the gyms? How would you explain about why is our gym different to other gyms?
A lot of this stuff has become commoditized, so I don't want to hang on it too much, because everyone has access to these things. Like, it's not unique to us, but we will go the extra mile when it comes to facility design and equipment specification. Now, a lot of people might not have that, like I said, the know-how or the resource, or the have that available to them when they open a gym. We do, and we will only open a gym at the point in which we can open it where the facility is really taken care of. So when you're coaching fitness, you need to make sure that people have enough space with the right weights, and you can select the right intensity, i.e. weight, and also the right form of the movement, so that person has a real individualized approach. So our gyms are very different from that standpoint. The specification of them and our understanding of fitness means that we can always tailor to the individual that's in front of us. I think then that ties into the program. Again, decades of programming experience from some of the brightest minds in the game, not just within our gyms. You throw in Craig Massey into that, you throw in Jens, you throw in me, Chad, Al, Paddy, Liam, Josh. These are like household names in the UK and further afield when it comes to like programming. And anyone that goes in our programs will know that they're just a little bit different. They're just cooler and sexier, but still built around the principles of good programming. So inside our gyms, you have access to those programs, right? So you've got this facility that's incredible. You have this program. That's nothing without the person standing at the front of the room that's able to communicate that program at a level in which you understand it at the right intensity with the right exercises, so that you can push yourself, but also keep coming back and keep coming back. And that's where, we hire some of the best coaches. We're very lucky that we attract great coaches, but you're always going to be met by someone in our gyms that is really there to serve you, that cares so much to nurture the community, that cares about your results, that has all the information you could ever wish for around training, nutrition, lifestyle practices, etc., at the touch of your fingertips. And I think the wraparound of all of that is just that it's then a melting pot of people who all value that stuff in terms of the members. They're high-performing individuals. And I've referenced this, and that I'm not saying they're high-performing, like they're all fucking CEOs and we only train the wealthy fucking high performers. This is about high performing and what you want from life. It's about living life on your own terms. It's about wanting to be stronger, wanting to be fitter, wanting to be proactive around your relationships and your fitness and all those things. So when you've got those sorts of people in a community with those other constituent parts which Marchon really focus on, you've got this amazing place that you want to go and train at every time, where you're looking to push yourself alongside everyone says this are like-minded individuals, but you go into Marchon and it genuinely is like-minded individuals. There's no outsiders, strong set of values, a really strong culture, and this unique mechanism within Marchon gyms that pulls the coach, the programming, the facility together. And then you throw in the nice to haves, which aren't essential, like the app, right? So everyone gets access to this app where they can track progress. So there's no stone unturned. You can always feel connected to the business if you're not in the gym, to the brand and to your training. Because if you're not in the gym and you're traveling, you can just do the workouts wherever you are. I just don't think there's anyone really thinking, to that level of detail. And if we take that next step, then, which Liam, our nutritionist, talks a lot about, that 30 to 90 minutes before. That could be the make or break for how successful that training session is. Like, how well fueled were you? What was your mindset and preparation going into a training session? Or did you just roll out of bed and rock in there, which is better than nothing? But we want to try and get you as good to, like, how can we optimize every moment of that day where possible? So thinking about the nutrition and how you're fueling those workouts, how you're fueling your recovery from workouts, the supplementation, then making sure you're hydrated, making sure you're taking the right products at the right times for the people that need them. Like I say, it's an ecosystem that means there's a touch point throughout your day, every day, that's centered around that moment within the gym, that hour, but it's complemented by everything else that we stand for. Even the content on your Instagram when you open up and you see the stories, or the piece of content around nutrition, training, whatever it may be. That's what we want. We want to be in your face the whole time until you get to a stage where, like, you're fucking in this flow of, like, training, working your relationships, feeling really, really good about yourself. And it's all built around that moment within the gym.
Yeah, amazing. So let's move into, like, the industry as a whole then. So what's one thing that you wish people knew about you or your journey in the industry that would make a difference to the way someone views or attacks fitness in general?
I've always had a bit of a following, but, like, my following has probably been accelerated since you came on board and we started doing black and white videos that are really motivational with fucking whoever speaking over the top of it. Yeah, but I always had there's some OGs that follow me that will know that I've been in the game for a long time, and I think what a lot of people coming into the Marchon brand now, like, won't appreciate the story of kind of how we got there or my fitness journey in. So I think it's that, like, just knowing that, I started lifting weights, and I've talked about this in a previous episode, at like 14. I became really obsessed with wanting to know about nutrition. I've become obsessed with everything that's kind of come into the industry to the point where I can look at it, I can try it, I can adopt the practices around it, and I can see whether it actually serves me. Whereas other people just don't really want to do that work. So I think that's the main thing, is that people often see brands as overnight successes. Again, the George and Mike episode will speak to this. They've been going 15 years. The breakthroughs only came in the last 2, 3, 4 years where they saw real, like, acceleration. And I only think that we're starting to, like, break through and get a bit of momentum now after 8 years of being as the Marchon business, and a good 3, 4 years prior to that of coaching, and a good 5 years prior to that of training and playing rugby. So I think just appreciating the journey. That's not to say that people should, like, rest on their laurels. Like, I do think there needs to be a real fucking intent to everything you're doing every day, and an awareness that you can move probably quicker than you're moving, and you can put more effort in than you're putting in. But really, it's a perspective of how long some of these things take.
How do you see that? What do people say to you that makes you believe that maybe they don't understand that this is sort of a life mission rather than just the last couple of years that you've been on it?
People message me like, how do I do what you've done? Or you really inspire me. What you've built is exactly what I want to build. And I'll go on their profile. Like, I probably spend sometimes too much time just going on random people's profiles just to see. Because it serves a, like, two-way. If I do get in a dialogue with them, I want to make sure I'm prepared. I've done a bit of research with them, so I can build a bit of instant rapport, and we can get into what they want. And I just see they're not doing anything that I did from fucking a young age, and I think that's kind of like, problems with society without being not an old fucker talking about that shit. But I think it's problems with society. I think it's problems with work ethic. I think it's problems with people's understanding of how long something of real worth actually takes to build because of how instantaneous things are and the instant gratification people are looking for. But that's probably the biggest question I get asked, and it's kind of offensive because I'm like, without sounding like a dick, we're the best at what we do, and we're the best at what we do for a reason. We have the best team. We've been doing it the longest. We've been doing it with the right, from a place of integrity and authenticity the entire time, and we've put in hours and hours and hours of work. You can't just come in and do it. Like, go and do the sets and reps and work it out for yourself. And I'll give you all the answers, but the thing is, so I'll tell them what I've done, and they're like, there's got to be an easier way than that. It's mindless.
No shortcuts around here. So to speak on that, what are some of the issues you see sort of in the industry? Obviously, we battle against some things when it comes to bringing out products or looking at new ways of getting people involved in what we're doing. But what do you think are the issues at the moment in the industry that are sort of not doing any good?
I think it's a blessing and a curse. You know, I'm a fine one to say about like profound claims that we'll make about like, you know, we're the best in the world. You know, I do genuinely believe it, but it's easy just to say whatever the fuck you want to say, and there's no repercussions. Like there's no repercussions. Like people can say and do what they want, whatever they want to do in this space. And there's a few people. Obviously, there's some well-known names that like to call people out and stuff, which I think is good. So long as it's for the right reasons. I do think sometimes people get a little bit carried away with calling people out and for the wrong reasons. But in this industry, I think that's probably the biggest problem is that you can literally say you're the best in the North or you're the best at it, and based on what? But like I said, I think back to times when the first time I changed our business page, Instagram, like the number one functional fitness brand in the UK. I think I did it in like 2018 or 2019. As like something that I wanted to keep reading until to be like, you fucking said you're going to be that. You need to try and get there. So I did it back then, right? So I'm not throwing shade on people that do it, but I do think there needs to be some repercussions for the way even people go on podcasts and say stuff that just fundamentally isn't true, that have influence. I think that's, with great power comes great responsibility, and I think people abuse their power sometimes. So I think that's a big issue.
So there's obviously the side of that where people look at it and they go, "Oh, that's just like an arrogant statement or whatnot." But when does that become damaging? That sort of anyone can say anything in this industry. When does it become a problem?
I think for the listeners of like I say, when there's this mass indoctrination of people who have lots of influence and power and credibility for whatever reason, and they say things that the layperson doesn't understand where the facts are. You know, I talked to it on the podcast with Liam, where you've got someone who's genuinely an expert. Like you sit down with him. I just sat down with him this morning, and he was reeling off the shit for me. I'm like, fucking hell, I wish I recorded this. But you know, he's happy to be like kind of in the background, not really not being too polarizing and that kind of stuff. We other people that are like, fuck it, I'm all for myself. I'm going to be really polarizing. I'm going to come in with these bold statements that factually are incorrect and just say what I want to say for monetary gain. So I think that can become damaging. You know, we've seen that with some big podcasts recently. I think for the person that is saying things around their own business or what have you that's pretty profound, that isn't built on anything, it's just a dangerous place to be because you believe your own hype. And I do think there needs to be I'm a classic case that there needs to be a period in the early days of like believing your own hype, gassing yourself up, you know, fake it till you make it type mentality. But only if there's real substance being built in the background, so that like eventually you can fulfill on the things you're saying. I just think the fitness space is like, it's all fucking smoke and mirrors with Instagram and social media.
Do you think the mass of information is a problem in terms of how much is out there? Because as a consumer, you're taking in all this information about nutrition and training and what the best split is and how so-and-so does their workouts. And it's like people find it hard to know what to trust, what to look at and how to absorb all that. Do you think that's an issue?
It's an issue, but it's always been there and it always will be there. Like that's because if you think about how the world goes around, it all comes back to money. All comes back to the ability to for things to be able to be passed around of value that keeps the kind of the circles moving. So And also, a lot of those things are talked about that might not be grounded on actual science, and it's kind of anecdotal and it's worked for some people, will work for mass populations. It's just they might not always work for mass populations, and then they'll move on to the next thing. So I think there's merit to all these different methods, like we spoke to the other day, in some cases, but without all the context and all the picture, which people don't want to give, because one, the listener doesn't want to hear it. I don't want to hear all the context. I just want the thing. Give me the magic pill. And also the person trying to sell that thing or talk about that thing doesn't have the time to, and it's not in their interest to talk about the full context. It's like, just do this method that I did, so I can sell it to you. I don't think it's going to go away though.
Interesting. And what could fitness professionals do better in the industry, or what would you want to see more of moving forward, if you could have a say in that?
If fitness professionals stuck to what they were supposed to be, which is fucking being great coaches, they'd have a lot more success and a lot better time and a lot longer career. I think they get sidetracked by trying to become an influencer. And for the record, I don't refer to myself as an influencer. I never wanted to become an influencer. I don't want to become an influencer. If someone called me an influencer, I'd punch them in the nose. You can become a person of influence from doing the right things over and over and over again and helping people. And I think that's what coaches need to prioritize. Not calling yourself a fucking coach and content creator. Again, might be a little bit rich for me because I post content, but you're the content creator. I just post it on my channel. People are putting more time and effort into their content creation than the actual like information they're giving away or the coaching that they're giving to people. Again, my opinion. I know you can be successful trying to do both, but if I ever heard someone introduce themselves as I'm a personal trainer and content creator, which I've heard people do, they're basically content creators that built some clout and they're quite fit and now they've become coaches. It's ludicrous. And then also just the endorsements and ambassadorships that I see go around now as ways to monetize your audience and earn some extra cash, which again is everyone's prerogative. I think it's the way the world goes round. But I think if fitness professionals truly spent the time to understand the brand that they're gonna endorse, to really educate their users on why they're endorsing them, and when they say this is the only product that I trust, I'd love someone to go, why do you trust that product? Do a video on why you trust them. This is the only formula. What is it about that formula that you think? They're just chatting shit because their audience isn't going to question them. And if they did question them, they're not going to have any answers, or they'll just make something up because the person asking doesn't know and can't authenticate what this person's saying. I think that's a problem because it means that audiences are sometimes getting taken advantage of, and I think that's poor.
So, what are things you think the majority of people are missing when thinking about nutrition as it relates to fitness? Obviously, we've got a full podcast on nutrition. Is there anything that's stand out? Obviously, you get a million questions a day. What's something that comes up a lot that you think is quite an easy fix to people's understanding about nutrition when it comes to fitness?
Liam hit the nail on the head, and that you've got to put some fucking effort in. Like and maybe this person asking the question didn't watch the episode, in which case I apologize. But if you've watched the episode and you're still asking that question, like, I can't help you. All the information is laid out there for you. The only thing that now needs to happen is you need to take your understanding of that information, and we tried to articulate it in a fairly like easy, digestible format. Take the information and apply it. Using some of those constraints that we talked about, best case might be MyFitnessPal, whatever else, to a point where you can start to educate yourself, and then you can be empowered to then take that understanding and that momentum into that journey of nutrition to keep going. There's really nothing else to be said in it. It goes back to the fact that people will hear this information and I think they understand it, but they just don't want to apply it, because that's where the hard work comes in. The hard work either being in, you're going to have to put yourself in a deficit, which is going to feel uncomfortable because you've got to stop eating the shit that you want to eat all the time, or you're going to have to track your MyFitnessPal. It might be uncomfortable, or you're going to have to download this bit of software that's going to cost you £7.99 on a subscription, and that's uncomfortable because you don't want to spend that money on it. Like, either which way, something's causing friction because of the energy you have to put into it, the money you're going to have to invest into all that shit. I don't have the answers for you then, because that's now the bit that you need to try and do.
Yeah,
and fundamentally, it's how I put food on the table by people paying for our advice and knowledge and coaching. It's how other coaches put food on the table too, and that's why that profession exists, because it's not the information, because you can get all the stuff they're talking about somewhere else. It's the mechanism for accountability and you wanting to actually apply it, which is usually putting skin in the game. So put skin in the game. Stop just asking questions in question boxes and fucking do it. Sorry.
Yeah, your Sunday Q&A down the toilet. No one's going to ask any questions now.
No, I'm
too scared.
I mean it in the nicest possible way. It's just like that's genuinely the answer. It's like, go back and listen. If they haven't listened to that podcast, go back and listen to the nutrition podcast. It probably covers everything that someone starting out with their nutrition journey or looking to achieve a better understanding of calories, macronutrients, and how to construct a diet. It maps out everything for you. The only next step is for you to pay me to make sure you do it, which that service doesn't exist, so you can't do that. Pay someone to make sure you do it, or to go and do it and just invest, like I said, into the apps and whatever it is that's going to manage your ability to be accurate, and then give yourself time. 4 weeks is probably all it takes for you to get a basic understanding. In fact, Liam, we spoke to this 5 days of recall, right? Looking at what you currently eat. Then we can get best case scenario, and then we can just go, what's the difference between the two? How do we start to move from currently where we're at to best case scenario? And at somewhere along that journey, you might be able to get all the way to best case scenario and still feel like, okay, I'm living. You might only get halfway and be like, this is as far as I want to try and go because the juice isn't worth the squeeze, going all the way to best case scenario because of social occasions or the way my life is constructed. But that's where the individualization comes from, which only you can go and find.
I mean, you see it in we've got a summer shred going on at the moment, which is backed by, weekly calls, all the information in terms of PDFs, and then a training plan that's excellent as well. But you see it in the chat. There's hundreds of people that are now eating in a calorie deficit. They're training really hard in a program every day, and they're losing weight.
Yeah.
They're feeling really good about themselves. There's hundreds of them in that chat. They almost seem amazed that it's happening, but they're doing the right things.
It's crazy. It's crazy, isn't it? Because they're like, this is life changing.
Yeah.
Genuinely, as good as our summer shred is, and like I've already said it, no one is doing a challenge like we've done for the price point and the support and the education and the way in which it's delivered. No one ever will. But the only difference is this person bothered to spend the money and listen to what's saying and go and do it. Because the information is the information. It's like, it's not groundbreaking. It's mad.
Crazy. So here's a good one. So the role of genetics in fitness. So to what extent do genetics determine our fitness potential? How much can we realistically change body composition, strength, and performance through training and nutrition? Probably something that a lot of people that maybe haven't trained yet or are looking at people on Instagram or, physique-wise being like, oh, genetics is obviously a massive part of it. How do you think that role of genetics in fitness plays a part to it? And can the everyday person achieve a good physique by just doing the basics like you normally say?
I think everyone's got their sort of max physical potential. Like, I just think many people are playing so far away from it because of all the things we've aforementioned, right? Not many people are investing into a progressive strength training program that, and when I say investing into, I'm talking about years of progressing their motor control. So refining their ability to move really well. So refining their ability to squat, lunge, hinge, push, pull, etc. Then going through that journey of muscular endurance, strength endurance, absolute strength. So moving all the way from like, how well can I do an air squat, right through to how much weight can I put on my back and max out a back squat. You're not going to do that in a 6-week training program. You're not going to do that in a 12-week training program. You're not going to do that in a fucking 12-month training program. You might go through a cycle of that, but you're not going to eke out every bit of potential that you could going through that. That's years and years of training. So I think that's one thing. People are so far away from their max physical potential. Then you couple in that nutrition thing that we just spoke about, then the new recovery, and then the sleep and all this kind of stuff. So people start to blame their genetics before they've even gone anywhere near all of those things. A great example of this is like Chad. How naturally gifted is he? Strength, speed, endurance, all those things. Like, great genetics for being an athlete. Just doesn't really dive into some of this. You're another example. Like, your genetics are phenomenal. Your skill acquisition, your ability to pick up skills is like far quicker than mine ever was. Your strength to go from deadlifting 140 kilos to 200 kilos, going through one of those cycles that I just said, you're actually that example of 12 months to build motor control, muscular endurance, strength endurance, absolute strength. Now when we do it again, so long as you can complement that with the nutrition, the recovery and everything to to get it right, your deadlift will go to 220, to 230, to 240. So you'll actually surpass my deadlift in 2, 3, 4 years of training, where it's taken me 10, 12, 15 years of training, largely down to your size compared to my size, just your athletic potential, genetics and all those things. So I do think it plays a role in it. And you look at those real outliers, whether it's bodybuilders, sprinters, etc., genetics are just off the chart. So I think it plays a massive role. And I think we have to deal with the hand that we're dealt. But I also think that, and this goes back to what Marchon was was meant to be about. It's about exploring as much of that potential as possible. This without limits mindset. I think it was Liam, maybe, whoever we spoke to the other week on the podcast, and they were like, without limits isn't about saying you can do anything at any time and just expecting it's going to happen. It's like within your domain of control, or your area of expertise, if we're talking about your profession, or within your, if we're talking about fitness, it's like within your, I could never be an NBA player. Right. But like within the things that you can control, it's how far can you explore, how far can you push yourself and become uncomfortable to a point where you can really excel. So in a roundabout way, I'm answering your question. It plays a big part in it, but that excuse for people comes in way too soon because they haven't done all the sets and reps that we spoke about over years and years and years and years. Does that answer it?
Yeah, absolutely. So to move into sort of mental health, obviously fitness is a massive thing that helps a lot of people when it comes to mental health. How does exercise impact in terms of, trying to think of a good way to ask the question, in terms of it can be a tool, right? But it can also go the other way for people when it becomes like an obsession, or even they use it as punishment. So how do you think in terms of the industry that's being sort of projected, and what would your sort of tips be in terms of how to best use fitness for what it's meant for and what it's good for, rather than the opposite? Does that make sense? It
makes complete sense. I want to tread carefully around the question because like I'm not an expert in mental health, and I think probably too many people talk about it like they have a good understanding about it. So I want to preface by saying that. I said what I do know about fitness is it builds an incredible amount of confidence when you can overcome struggle, whether it's pushing out extra reps, running that little bit faster, pushing your heart rate beyond a certain level, like that resilience that it can build through pushing through hardship. Now, we're not talking about any great hardship, right? We're just talking about training, but that can make someone mentally stronger because they feel more capable. As well as the other things, I guess the easy ones like the endorphins and all that kind of stuff. So I think it's a great tool to put you in a better space, a headspace. I think it's a great tool to work on in a controlled environment. No one's going to come and, it's not like a war, no one's going to come and kill you. But in a controlled environment, you can work on yourself, you can get stronger, you can progress, you can push your physical capability, and you can also celebrate daily wins. Not that every training session is going to go away, but you can see tangible progress. You can map progress and you can see metrics and things moving in the right direction, which for a lot of people in life is where they're not maybe seeing progress. So this offers that outlet. It's a controlled environment where all of those good things, progress, strength, fitness, confidence, physical change, mental change, can all happen in one place. So that's why I think a lot of people use it as a tool for that. They can go too far, particularly around body image. I think a lot of people, when you start seeing your abs, and I've been there, right, you end up taking way more selfies. You know when someone's dying because their camera roll is full of like their abs, and then it becomes, you don't really know when to, where the end is. And sometimes it takes going over the edge a little bit to realize, that's a little bit too far. So I think that's, again, it's still quite a controlled environment unless things go real south for people. Again, I just don't have the expertise to talk to eating disorders and that kind of stuff. I think from a people abusing fitness, I do think people do that. I think people are running away from their problems to a place where they can like not have to think about them, because you won't think about your problems when you're in a fucking 60-minute Barry's class, for example. All you can think about is the treadmill not chewing you up. And I think people are kind of running away from those problems. But I also don't know what the fix is there. I believe when you go to the gym, you should be running towards reality. How strong are you? Like that's the reality of where you're at. How fit are you? That's reality. So can you think about where your current baseline is and trying to progress on that? Can you see what your current let's use VO2 max, where that is, and try and progress on that, because that's the reality of your physical potential. Don't escape into that environment, because you'll lose sight of what the numbers are. Usually the people that escape into that environment don't care what weight's on the bar. It's like, you load it for me. Or they're hitting the same weight every day. They don't care what the speed is on the treadmill. They don't care what their time was for that workout or whatever else, because they're escaping and they don't want to think about it. I think that's a dangerous place to be in. Yes, it creates escape from the outside world, but escape to the reality, because like we said, it's going to give you a good prediction of the quality of your life and how long your life's going to go on for. So if you don't want to take consideration to those things when you're inside the gym, then more for you. I know I didn't answer that question as direct as maybe that person would have hoped, but I don't feel qualified or comfortable to talk to that right now.
So to bring it sort of more personally about sort of what Marchon does for individuals that have maybe been through that, because I've seen many messages about people talking about their struggles with fitness before and now being on the program and being involved in the community. They have a much better relationship with fitness.
Yeah.
How does it feel for you, and what would you like to say to the individuals that have changed their relationship with fitness through Marchon?
I mean, it's everything to me. It's everything kind of what we set out to do. There's been multiple times, like in the 15 plus, 20 plus years I've been training, 15 plus years I've been working as a coach, and 10 plus years I've been using fitness for like what I need to get from it, whether it was rugby or now, that's like quote unquote like saved my life. When I say saved my life, I mean more as like put me on a path that's like given me opportunities and all of those things. So people's experience of it now that are in the Marchon community is exactly what I experienced. So it's sick that like you're all getting from it what I got from it. I think if you look at a lot of coaches and people in the space, like they've come into it or they stay into it because of some personal growth or experience that they've had. And I think that's why they all build their own communities, because there's a real like relatability between them and their story and the people that they're bringing in. The reality is that it compounds, right? That consistency, that routine, that discipline, that getting stronger, that getting fitter, that eating, you're fueling your body with the right food, that going to bed, like it's all of those little touch points that compound. And whilst I love the fact that people hang their hat on it, it was the Marchon workout, that might have been the catalyst. And I don't want to take it away from being the catalyst, but it's the compounding effect of all of those things. And then you're in this community, then somewhere around the world someone's going to be doing that workout. Then you might pop up on the Marchon stories because you're resharing stuff, and then someone they might reach out to you and be like, oh, I saw you on the Marchon program, and like it just adds good to your life. Like nothing bad comes from it, right? So when you've got that support and connection from the community, the access to coaches, the program, you're getting fitter, all these things, like it's just it's a whirlwind, and it gets faster and faster and faster and faster, and you then, like I say, it compounds. You bring in all these other things from nutrition and supplements and what have you, that like it does change your life. So I think that's sick, and I think whether it's with Marchon or anywhere else, if you can find a program that's really underpinned by progress and the progress that you're looking for, whatever it is that you deem as like your goals in fitness, and that's coupled with people that genuinely care about you getting that progress, and then a community that also care about it, like it's a powerful like position to be in, particularly if you've never experienced it before. And it's like, fuck, I always associated exercise with like being boring and like hard and not really getting there with it. And that's probably most people's experience right now. And it really shouldn't be that way.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a great way to finish off. So what can people expect from you for the rest of the year? What's on the cards for Marchon and you personally? And obviously the podcast is going to keep going, so they've got episodes to look forward to. But in terms of the business and you, what's coming up?
I mean, I put on social media in like January that 2024 I'm going to fucking send it. So I'm going to fucking send it. Said I'm going to do it. I think it is really like more of the same. I think the conversations and the opportunities and stuff become bigger and better, but I think you're afforded those conversations and opportunities for like always being ready and making sure that like we're staying relevant and credible. I think the brand is hot right now, and I think that's a testament to the coaches and the work that everyone or the team are putting in. So we will open 1 to 2 gyms this year, which is going to be sick. We will be in a few new places, so hopefully we'll get over to Australia this year. From a product standpoint, I mentioned earlier, and hopefully we'll sit down and record with Liam next week, but we're going to bring some sick products to the Marchon supplement, which is so exciting. Like to now have these physical products that are that are genuinely amazing. It's so sick for the brand, and the kind of dream of this brand ecosystem is beginning to be fulfilled. I mean, you know, I said it earlier. No one's doing what we're doing in terms of attracting the caliber of coaches, and even off the floor, like in the back office, the caliber of people that work here, and their passion and dedication is unmatched. The time, investment, and the effort and extent we go to make sure that our products and services are the best on the market, like the work that goes in daily, no one's doing it. So it's more of that, and it's trying to give access to more people to experience it, because we just spoke on that last question. When people do experience it, I think it's a very sticky brand. I don't think people choose to move off for any other reason than like specific circumstances. I think when you're in, you realize that this is different, and it really can take you on a journey, and it can change your life in more ways than one. So more than that, I hope.
Nice.
Sick.
I think we're good there.
Thanks, Sammy.
Cheers, mate.